Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's April 22nd. It's a Wednesday. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday. So we're taking your questions, your comments on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. Send them our way. We got plenty of things to get into. You guys had some thoughts on the proposed Super League between MLS and Liga MX. We're at a point now, I think, in the media world, in the sports discussion world, that things take weird turns. Like, I've seen now some people talk about this thing like it's just about to happen. And it's like, wait a minute, what? No, I don't know. What? That's kind of where we're at these days. Things just get jumped on, and rabbit holes become much larger than your traditional rabbit, and things happen. But you guys had some thoughts. We'll get into that. We'll get into updates from around the world of soccer. We were going to have an interview with Nofo Brew, which is up in North Forsyth, Joe Garcia, yesterday. The two of us battled technical gremlins. I don't feel too bad because no matter if you're watching, any news right now, local, national, whatever, everybody's dealing with these things that we've been dealing with since the beginning. John deals with on a daily basis. So, the interview was going to start with Google Hangout, and the Wi-Fi kept dropping out, and it kept stalling. So then we tried the phone, and recording phone calls, I've found, can be hit or miss. This time it was a miss, and it got half of the conversation really good, and the other half really, really low. So to prevent you guys from cranking up your volume when Joe talks about Nofo Brew, we're going to redo the interview, and we'll have Joe Garcia from Nofo Brew Co., which is a great name. We'll have him on here very soon. It's on our virtual brewery tour, and we'll be heading up to North Forsyth when we can. One of the things that stuck with me talking to Joe was, they opened in September, so the timing's been really rough for them. They were, looking forward to a season of Atlanta United and watch parties, because from the day they opened, they've done watch parties for every Atlanta United game, and they've been really impressed with, being an hour away from the city, the turnout for these games. And the soccer community in Forsyth County is very large, but still, to have that kind of, dedicated game in, game out, people showing up for a watch party is pretty cool.
Yeah, and when I know that some folks may think of Atlanta as what's inside the perimeter, but as the city has continued to grow and grow and grow, a lot of folks talk about Cobb County and Gwinnett County as two of the fastest growing counties, not just in the state of Georgia, but in the entire country. But now you have Forsyth County that is a part of that equation as well, as folks continue to go up interstate, Georgia 400, and it just continues to grow. And the fact that Nofo is having the success and the interest and having it as a gathering point, not necessarily a surprise and fantastic to see.
Yeah, I mean, you talk Metro Atlanta at this point. I mean, I think in the past, Metro Atlanta was looked at as not even just in the city, but at least the perimeter and maybe on the edges of it. Now, I mean, you can get pretty far out and still be part of the metropolitan Atlanta area. So it's rather large, and it's very cool to see Atlanta United get so embedded with it. So a couple things with Nofo. We will be up there when we can, and we don't know when that's going to be, obviously. We are not rushing back out to brewery shows, no matter what happens right now. We're going to take our time on this, so don't freak out. But we will be doing that when the time is right, and we'll also have an interview with Joe in the meantime when we can reconnect and figure out what form of technology is going to cooperate with us.
Just do not listen to me if you're looking for advice in that vein.
I never do. That's why I don't ask. I just, hope that you're on the air in the morning and only drop out once or twice during the show.
For real, considering Office HD is ground level at best.
Yeah, something like that. We had some people with thoughts and comments about the Super League idea that is floating around about Major League Soccer and Liga MX.
We did?
Yes, John, we have a Twitter account, and it's twitter.com/soccer down here, in case you're looking for it.
Okay.
And then, in your Twitter account, or you can log into that one because you do have the password.
Yes.
You can look at when people say things to you. And a good friend of the show, Tafka,
yes, he had his
a
long
lot to say.
He did. And
so,
he says
people did have things to say about it.
Why, yes, they did. All right, so here's what Tafka said initially.
Hold on 1 second before we get to Tafka. If you're wondering what's going on John's side of this is day 3 without caffeine. John's losing his mind.
John never had his mind.
No, you had it, but now it's gone.
Yeah, and I was explaining to Jason basically
it still makes no sense.
That the day gets away from me. Okay, here's the deal.
Explain this.
Yeah, I will try to explain this before we get into Tafka and his thoughts, because he put a lot of thought into this, and I want to give it its due course. All right, so here's the deal. You all know that the physician's assistant attached to my doctor basically says, "Hey, you like food?" And that's his way of saying, "Dude, lose some lbs." So what I've been doing since my last physical is limiting myself to 1 cup of soda a day. And you guys have been able to hear the results of this. So right now, I have no Mountain Dew in the house, and this is day 3 of this. And usually I like to have that 1 soda during the show, and then the rest of the day it's diet soda, and there you go. So here's the deal. Since the soda is here with me in the morning, obviously I can't go out and shop before the show starts. But because I'm studying for the show.
Okay.
I get up in the morning. First thing I'm doing is an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of wires and Twitter and studying and getting my rundown ready and all the topics that that I think are worthy of discussion. So,
how far away is the store?
Half a mile.
How long would that take?
Depends on if I want to get exercise or not. Because
okay. Let's say you want to get
2 miles a day, but that's probably 20 minutes walking each way plus going in and getting the soda. So you're probably looking at about an hour, and that would take up all my study time.
20 minutes to half a mile. You could get up earlier, by the way. But anyway, go ahead, proceed.
All right. So, show is done. Edit the show, get it down to our friends at ESPN Coastal, working on book 6, getting my 2 miles in the afternoon, which I've been very vigilant about, by the way. I've been actually doing 2 miles a day. I leave the house when I get a little stir crazy. And then by the time that's done and everything is set aside and I'm ready to go, it's basically dinner time and hanging out with the boss. And so I lose a day of shopping because of all the other things that I'm doing. And you don't want to leave the house at 5:30, 6 o'clock and dinner's getting ready on the table. And then it's 8 o'clock and then you're getting ready to wind down and everything. And so I lose the day if it's not here with me in the morning. So that's why I am at day 3 and we have the order in to our nearby grocery store for tomorrow to do the curbside service and get there and be told that it's not ready yet and it'll be ready in 3 or 4 hours from the assigned time that they give us. So that's where we are. I do have a drink with me at the moment. It is Diet A&W because it's as close to the real A&W that I can taste because I don't like most diet drinks anyway. So that's why I don't have caffeine with me for day 3 in a row.
Okay, I have a couple thoughts on this real quick.
Bring it.
First off, caffeine's not that important to you, obviously, because
it is,
no,
sir.
If it was, you would have gotten up 20 minutes, 30 minutes earlier and went to the store to get it, or you would carve out your 2-mile walk and include a walk to the store as part of it.
I have so thought about that over the last couple of days.
Yeah, well, either the caffeine is not important enough for you to do those things. Well, no, obviously it is because you haven't done them. Or your brain is so broken at this point without caffeine that you're not thinking clearly.
that.
That
I'll
might
go
be
with that
it.
one.
Because I'll tell you, when I am in the morning and I have my last Red Bull or Coke Energy or whatever it is for the day, when I know that, okay, I wake up in the morning, I grab it out of the fridge, I'm like, oh, that's the last one. Part of my day, part of my planning becomes, all right, I need to get to a store to go get something for tomorrow morning. That just becomes part of the deal. So that's because it's very important to me.
Part of my planning, but my day gets away from me.
Well, it's happened far too often, so either caffeine's not that
damn
important
right.
or you're broken these days.
I'm broken.
That's possible. Tofka's not broken, and Tofka had ideas on... Well, he might be, I don't know, but he wasn't broken in this case. He has ideas on the Super League that I think he knows there's parts of it I'm not going to like.
Yes.
It's okay.
So he says, I like the idea, but only as a promotion league, not as a merger of existing leagues. Liga MX has very few secondary tier clubs that can compete in Liga MX, but they have 3 or 4 that are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. And right now I would say...
There's something I would say to that, because can compete in Liga MX, I disagree. Are financially attractive to a merged league, that's a different conversation. I mean, Leon is a prime example. In the listing that was done by Henry Bushnell, Leon was not in the Super League, which is kind of crazy when you look at how good they've been in recent years.
Yeah.
But are they a incredibly attractive team from a financial perspective? No, they're not. They would be in that next group. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. And the way Mexico and the league functions, we see it here in MLS too. I mean, if you have more money, you're going to have a greater chance of winning. That's just a fact. But you do see teams pop up and surprise you. I mean, we go back. Portland, is not a low-spending team, but Portland was in the final in 2018. We know Seattle. We know Toronto. They spend a lot of money. We know Atlanta spends a lot of money. Go back to 2015. You had, Columbus in there. Columbus is not known for spending money under Anthony Precourt. They're not known just yet for spending crazy amounts of money under new ownership. You had New England in 2014, and they were known, in the Robert Kraft era at that time as being a team that didn't spend money. In Mexico, you can go through it and see the same. It's more likely that your top teams that spend a lot of money are going to be in the championships, but it's not a guarantee, because we've also seen Club America go through droughts. This season currently in Mexico, Monterrey, after winning the championship, they've been awful. So I would caution that. It's not so much about performance when you're talking about the Super League idea. You're factoring in a lot of the financial side and the attractiveness that is a different conversation. I mean, you could have Columbus, for example. I think this season Columbus could be one of the better teams in MLS, but is Columbus going to move the needle on a Super League TV deal? No, it's not.
No. So Tofka says, MLS, even with a salary cap, has a similar scenario. Moreover, MLS is at 26 clubs, going on 30 clubs, and likely won't stop there. That size of league is problematic for creating even scheduling in a national, in all caps, league. The only approach is to either concede that you play each team only once or cut the league into division. I'm okay with the first, not okay with the second.
Yeah, Tofka hates the division idea, but it comes back to the first point. If you're going to have a league of that size, you're not playing everybody home and away. You can't. It's just not going to happen.
But more importantly, Tofka continues, the divide between ambitious clubs, in quotation marks, and content clubs, in quotation marks, is going to continue to grow. While the salary cap is nice and definitely necessary, the system is hamstringing a number of clubs from realizing their potential. For that reason, I think there needs to be a mechanism that allows certain clubs a way to continue to elevate itself, but without isolating half of MLS clubs who can't or won't compete.
Well, hold on. The issue that you're going to have here, and I've heard this proposed many times, and like people have said, oh, if you're in the Champions League, then you should get $1 million more in your salary cap or an extra DP or whatever. Well, then you're going to stay at that level. And the teams that didn't win to get to that level are going to stay at the level they're at. You just further the separation, and honestly, you codify it, and it becomes how it is. You know, if you say that Atlanta's ambitious and wants to spend more so they can because they're in this Super League, but, you know, Columbus can't, then, you know, I mean, it just further divides teams. I do the whole thing about being held back. I don't think we think of other sports this way. And maybe that's just an American thing. Maybe that's just soccer versus American sports. I don't know. But, you know, we don't think of the Cowboys being held back by the salary cap, do we?
No.
Because you know Jerry Jones would spend every dollar he has to win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Pay the luxury tax. Not worried
he
about
wouldn't care. He'd pay everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't think of them being held back because of the cap. Because the cap is what you have, and the cap is to ensure parity. And MLS, like, that's the idea. And MLS in a league with a cap has probably the most broad setup to have a cap, but also allow teams to spend beyond it with the designated player rule. I mean, there's nothing stopping an MLS team outside of, you know, getting the signature of going to sign Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Antoine Griezmann to your 3 designated player spots. Like, if you want to spend it, you can spend it. So the ambition argument in terms of creating the league structure is what it is to keep costs manageable and to ensure parity. You know, I have to disagree with the general idea that, well, we're holding ambition back. The trade-off, in my opinion, is worth it because we have a more interesting league competition, but there's still plenty of room for ambition. You know, there's nothing stopping teams from signing 3 players to $30 million a year contracts if they want to do it. And now with the U22 initiative, when the CBA gets done, you can go sign 3 players under the age of 22 and pay whatever you want transfer cost. Doesn't matter. But their salary has to be a certain amount, which is generally how it would work. If you see a young top player, you're going to have to pay to get that player, but their salary might not be, you know, exorbitant just yet. So the ambition thing when it comes to this, it's not the driver of it for me. And it's just something that MLS is set up the way that it is for a variety of reasons. And I think generally they have worked well. Are there some clubs that could spend more? Yes. But the league is continually finding ways for those clubs to be able to spend more, but still keep a semblance of parity and salary cap. So I think they're managing both sides of it as well as any capped league has. It's a better idea than the luxury tax, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you have rules in place, and it's up to the owners and the front offices of MLS franchises to sit there and look at the salary construct as something to sit there and it's like, okay, we have this is what we have to adhere to, but at the same time, if we want to do other things outside of the construct and still be within the rules that are put forth by the league, we can still do things and be ambitious in either getting players, paying players, you know, bringing in talent, or, you know, however you want to do it. The construct is there, but you can work around it and work with it to get things done and still spend the money that you would want to be considered ambitious.
Yeah, you've still got room to be ambitious is where I'm at with it, but you have a cap that serves its purpose. It's 1, to keep costs manageable, and it's 2, to try to have some kind of parity. And I've said it for a long time, and I still hold to this. I think MLS is a more compelling league structure than a league like La Liga, and kind of like what the Premier League is turning into more and more, with Liverpool and Manchester City pulling away from a group. Now, the Premier League, because that second group has splintered so much, it's pretty interesting there, but you know that really, unless both teams have a bad year, it's going to be Manchester City or Liverpool winning the title right now. Mm-hmm. That could change when managers leave. That could change if they have a series of bad signings. There are things that can change it. But for the foreseeable future, nobody else is winning the Premier League. Spain at least has had Atleti, in recent years become part of the mix. But when you go in and it's Real Madrid or Barcelona, how exciting is the whole season? Germany, Bayern Munich, I can't remember how many titles they've won in a row. Juventus in Italy, same thing. It's like, is that preferable to the league format that MLS has? And the salary cap is one reason why MLS has the format that it does, and it has in my opinion, a more compelling league structure. Now, if you're a fan of a certain team, that changes it. But in general, looking at it from the outside, I watch more at MLS games for fun, not for work, not to study an upcoming opponent, but just for fun, than I watch random Premier League games, random La Liga games, because I think there's more meaningful games in MLS than there are in other leagues because of the playoffs, because of the anybody can win the title kind of thing. And I think this year was set up to be one of the most compelling seasons because 6, 8, maybe 10 teams could be considered, MLS Cup contenders.
I will watch as many MLS matches on any given day that I can get my hands on. When it comes to international stuff, I'm pretty much tied to Liga MX or the Premier League. For me, you look at La Liga and it's just kind of there. You look at Ligue 1 and it's just kind of there. You look at Germany, it's just kind of there. There's no there for me in a bunch of leagues in Europe, and I will be more than happy to watch the Prem because of the subplot of promotion and relegation and levels of success and things like that, and environments and atmospheres. But I will watch Liga MX. I will watch stuff in this hemisphere. I'm that guy that will watch Motagua play just to see what's going on here in the hemisphere because of the interest with CONCACAF Champions League. So
yeah, I'll do that. I watch Argentina because it's always up for grabs, and it's usually an interesting season because they don't have a structure to ensure parity, but parity gets ensured because young players leave the league so young. They leave the league at 18, 19, so you're constantly recycling rosters. So it's hard to build a powerhouse over a long period of time. So that's really interesting. You mentioned relegation, and yeah, when you get into a relegation battle, I'll watch it. When you get a Classico, I'll watch it. There's two different things, actually three when you include relegation into it. So compelling in terms of winning the championship. MLS for me is very interesting because of the number of potential champions. There is compelling when it comes to relegation, and that's a whole different kind of compelling. I don't like to watch bad teams play on a regular basis. But when you get down to the end of a season, and it's like this team's got to win to stay up, or whatever, yes, then that's compelling for a different reason. Now, there's also just the sheer quality side of it. And there are leagues like La Liga that are greatly... I mean, Real Madrid, Barcelona, you get Atleti in the mix, you get Valencia when they're strong in the mix. Love watching those games. Love watching the big games. They're not always great games, by the way. We've seen it many times in every league. Sometimes you get two great teams that play a stinker. Sometimes you get two bad teams that play a great game. It's just a game. I'm more interested in the more open competition that MLS has rather than a couple of powerhouses that dominate the league. And then I'm watching those games, or I'm watching the relegation battles at the end of the season. I like the more open competitions, and that's something about MLS that I really appreciate. And also, I mean, it might just be me. Like, I do lean to, stuff that is more local. I always have. Like, I'm more interested in a Chicago-Cincinnati match than a West Ham-Aston Villa match. That's just for me. Maybe it's just because I've been to Chicago and Cincinnati.
Yep.
I don't know. And I don't think I'm the norm, because I know a lot of soccer people will watch everything Premier League related and only cherry pick a handful of MLS matches. I'm the reverse, and the compelling nature of MLS for me in terms of getting into the playoffs, Liga MX has that too. The battle for playoff positioning, the battle to get into the playoffs, and then the playoffs themselves are one of the selling points of MLS. They're one of the selling points of Liga MX. It's why the ratings go up in the playoffs, and it's when you get some of the most fascinating matches in your league season. And I think for people who say like you should get rid of that, you can't, because of how compelling those matches are. I will take those over what happens in a lot of leagues around the world. The compelling side is the relegation battle. I'm going to take the playoff matches to determine a champion over the teams that are trying to stay up. It's just more interesting to me. Maybe it's the culture I've grown up in, et cetera, et cetera. But I think in terms of MLS having a structure that stunts ambition, I think they found a pretty good balance, and I want to see that continually open up, both in terms of the league overall spend with the cap, but also more ways to bring exciting, talented players into the league at a variety of ages, a variety of thoughts behind it. Guys you think you can sell and move on for a profit, guys that can move the needle and sell tickets and sell T-shirts. That's important too. You need both. And I want to see the league continue to grow and evolve, but try to balance the two. The teams that can spend and want to spend, and keeping everybody else within shouting distance of them.
Tafka continues, he says, creating a Super League with Liga MX gives an avenue for increased investment and world soccer status while not completely destroying the relevance of smaller MLS clubs, and creates an MLS that is feasibly able to still operate as a national league instead of the pseudo-national league built on divisions.
See, this is back to Tafka just not liking divisions. And that, I'm sorry, like, that's not... One, they don't have divisions right now, and we don't know if they will. So that doesn't factor into the Super League discussion at all for me. And two, I mean, if you have it, it's still a national league. I think the pseudo idea is a little much. You don't know if you're going to be able to, if you're in the Super League. Now, I think what Tafka is starting to set up is the fact that teams in the Super League could spend more money. But again, to me, all that does is that tells you that these teams are not MLS teams anymore. They're Super League teams, because you're giving them the resources to stay there. It doesn't make sense. If you're going to have promotion relegation and you're going to have caps, etc., you can't say, well, if you're in the higher division, you can spend more money, because then all that does is cement your spot in the higher division. Yeah.
He lays out a scenario of how it would work. Leagues get proportional numbers of spots, and then the bottom Liga MX club is relegated back to Liga MX. Bottom 4 MLS clubs relegated back to MLS. He says, I know y'all would hate that, though. And then he has a shrug.
No. Well, first off, hold on, Tafka. Settle down with the shrugging and all that. Jeez. Man, that's a little much. But I don't, for me, and this is why I said it yesterday, the way that I would structure it, I don't think you're going to grow the business when you create it in this structure. I don't think you truly grow the business this way, because you would have a promotion league, a super league that teams would be promoted into, but you would still be trying to maintain the domestic leagues. Mexico would have a lot of work to do, and I think the numbers of teams that Tafka had, there were very few Mexican teams in this thing.
Yeah, 5.
If I'm Liga MX, why would I even do this partnership if I'm only getting 5 teams in it? That doesn't make sense. It's not a partnership then. What this sounds more like is MLS buying out or controlling Liga MX. And I don't think they're ready to do that. Now, could that change down the road? Maybe, but I don't think it's anytime soon. The relegation side, I don't have a problem with promotion relegation. I want to make sure that's clear. I think the problem is about it that people always leave out of the conversation is what happens to the team that gets relegated. And in this case, you know, it's a weird structure to have teams that are able to spend more in a higher division because you're adding a cap element to it. But in this case, I think you're making the MLS league far less attractive. I don't know why it would be on national TV. I don't know why the crowds would be huge. I think it'd look like USL Championship. I think what you would do in this case is you would turn your domestic league into a second division, and the first division would just become the Super League. It wouldn't be what I think people are envisioning it as. The Super League would be this whole brand new thing, and MLS and Liga MX would continue to draw the same that they have and grow steadily as they have been. I don't see that being the case because you would be taking out of Mexico, let's say it's 5. You're probably taking America, Monterrey, Tigres, Cruz Azul, and León right now. Let's take those 5.
Yep.
So you're taking them out of Liga MX. So in Liga MX, it's going to be down to Chivas and Pumas to drive the financial side. In MLS, you're taking everybody that drives the financial side out of it, and it's going to be a league that would be led by, Dallas. It'd be led by Houston. It'd be led by San Jose. These are the teams that don't draw on national TV right now. So what I think would happen is your TV partners would say, we don't really want the MLS games. You'd have to try to make them take them. You'd have to have it as part of your negotiation. Well, you get, every Super League game, and you have to play one MLS game on national TV, either your ESPN or ESPN2 or FS1 or FS2, every week. You'd force it into the deal. And it wouldn't draw because they're not drawing now. And you take the top teams out of it, and you change the paradigm in terms of the playoff conversation, et cetera, et cetera. It's not as compelling. So what would happen is MLS, from a marketing standpoint, would become what USL Championship is. It'd be streamed. There'd be a handful of games on national TV, and only the fans in those markets, and it probably lose some of the casual fans, but also your national fans wouldn't really buy in until maybe a championship game. And in Mexico, it'd be the same thing, maybe even more of a drop-off, although if you keep the numbers so small of Liga MX teams, there would at least be a couple teams that drive the conversation in Mexico involved. I don't think it creates 2 strong first divisions and then something even bigger on top. I think what it does is it creates 1 first division between the 2 countries and then 2 second divisions. I don't think that's the route. I don't think that is where the money is. For me, the money is in a Champions League kind of format, but you still have your domestic competitions because then you get the best of both worlds. That's why Europe did Champions League, because the idea was that they'd make a boatload of money on Champions League, and I do think they'll expand it. I think they're going to need to. So they'll expand it to add a team to each group, and they'll keep expanding it. I would start the group to where it's basically like a mini league. If you play 10 games in it, but you're still playing your domestic competition, that would get you the best of both worlds because your domestic competitions would continue to grow. You'd still get your first division kind of money from your media partners, and that would continue to grow because you'd be building more compelling brands in it. You wouldn't be doing anything to harm the brands that you have. You would be accentuating them. If you add a relegation element into it, you would be doing harm to brands when they get relegated. And I don't think either country truly wants that. You don't want to see, Club America get relegated. You don't want to see Seattle Sounders get relegated in this type of scenario, which I know people would say it's not the same as a normal relegation, but it is. It is. Your domestic league is the second division at that point. It's not what it was before, and you can't tell me it is. If you're taking the best 5-10 teams out of it, it's not. It's the second division. So you're harming strong brands when you could do it differently and just accentuate it and create a new competition on top that you can make even more money with.
I've always thought in this discussion that the best thing in these ideas that are being tossed about is to have a set aside, have that additional element without taking anything away from MLS as we know it, taking anything away from Liga MX as we know it. Then that way, it is like you say with the Champions League over in Europe, where you're not taking away from competition of your favorite team in your favorite European league. They're just involved in this additional competition that is going to have this extra pot of money that's attached to it, that's going to have this extra amount of prestige attached to it. And that way you don't take away from what we know as MLS, what we know as the Liga MX, because of the point that you make about, well, if you remove, and that's the key, removing those teams from their native competitions, putting them in this next newest first division Champions League campeón de campeones kind of deal. And then what interest is there if you've removed those teams from the leagues that they were in? You're pulling away from that product. I think the set aside and the new competition would be the way to go here, because you're attracting new you're attracting TV partners. You're attracting TV partners that would not necessarily have had the chance to dive into any competition to bid on the process. And so I think that you're ginning up more interest, you're ginning up more networks that would want to broadcast this kind of stuff, and so you're giving that much more exposure to the leagues in this hemisphere if you do it as that standalone over as an additional competition.
So let's look over at Europe for a little bit of the reasoning here on this. I think the one thing we got to do when we have these conversations, and maybe it's something in the soccer world that we struggle with at times, there's differences between what we like individually, and a lot of people like promotion relegation and like the idea of it. And I get it. From a competitive standpoint, it's great. You have to deal with pressure. You have to deal with it. I don't think it promotes good football. I disagree with people who will tell you like it creates these great games and players who, play a certain way and all that. No, you learn how to deal with pressure.
Especially late in the year when you're trying to look at math and it's like, okay, what do I need to do just to stay here, as opposed to, playing soccer that you're capable of playing?
It doesn't improve the level of play. It improves the ability to deal with pressure. It does, from a competitive standpoint, there are some really good things about it. The cream should rise to the top. Oh, that's good. From a business perspective, there's really very little good about the idea of promotion relegation. A lot of people tie the parachute payments that the Premier League does into it. Well, one, not every league does that. The Premier League has stupid amounts of money to where they can do that. And the reason they did it was because it's not a good business practice to have promotion relegation. Period. That's why you have parachute payments. If it was a good business practice, then they would just say, well, you got relegated. So, good deal, and try to get back. But they're giving you money to make up for the fact that you're not in the first division anymore, because it's not a good set up for business. So there's two conversations here. There's what we like, and if we were creating a league for us, what we would do. And there's what's the best for the game. In my mind, in this situation, would something like this be interesting? Like, as just a fan? Yeah. I mean, you would have the promotion relegation stuff. That is interesting as a fan. You would have lots of elements, but I don't think you would dramatically improve the business of the teams. And honestly, I think you could hurt far more teams than you help if you do it in a promotion relegation Super League on top of the domestic leagues. I think there is a middle ground, and I think it is doing what Europe did when they went from the Champions Cup to the Champions League. And it's the same reason why now they're taking it to the extreme on the other side of pulling out of their domestic competitions. But the reasoning is this. You want more games on top of your domestic competition. You want more games that are of a compelling nature. You know, for a team like Juventus, like Bayern, like Manchester City and Liverpool, what's moving the needle at this point? You know, of course, Liverpool has a Manchester United match that's a big deal because of the rivalry. They have a match with Everton, that's the derby. But does Liverpool and Norwich really do anything for them from a business perspective? Wouldn't they rather be playing Bayern or name it, Ajax, anybody? Keep going. They're looking for more of those games. So they're trying to have the best of both worlds. And now they're taking it to a degree to say that them playing in their domestic competition is worthless because they're so far ahead of everybody. Even if they have a bad season, they're still likely to win the title. Now, MLS and Liga MX, they have one great equalizer that they both have: playoffs. Playoffs always bring in chaos. You can be the best team. LAFC, for example. Be the best team during the regular season and not win the title because of the playoffs. It gives you something to strive for next season. You can be Seattle, who was not the best team in the regular season, and win the playoffs. And you had an amazing year. That's the equalizer. Also in MLS, you have another equalizer in the cap structure and in the spending, limits that you have and those elements that keep everybody tighter again. So that's the big difference. European teams are looking for more of these compelling games, and they're making the decision, some of them anyway, that they would rather just go into a Super League format because they're not getting that, thing they need in their domestic leagues. They're not getting it because teams aren't at their level. MLS and Liga MX both have things that level the playing field more, so you're not going to have that element as much. You can do this Super League that really finds the middle ground for me in that you decide 10, if it's 8 games, okay, that's groups of 5. If you want to go 10, that's groups of 6. And you're adding those games as season games, but they're part of this league competition that would be between the two leagues. If you want to make it where everybody's involved, fine. Like we talked about yesterday, you could even get CONCACAF on board and have a couple CONCACAF teams win their way into it. Or you could make it where it is a separate deal, and it is you have to be at a certain level to get these games. You could do that, but I think teams need to still play domestically because MLS especially, the structure is not about creating super teams, it's about parity. If you do something like the Super League idea where you're separating teams out of MLS, you're destroying that, and I don't know if you really gain enough for the trade-off. I don't think you do.
Because if you're taking away your quote-unquote marquee teams and spenders and you're putting them in this Super League and you're pulling them away from your current MLS structure, let's say that, and I mean this for the casual fan, if you pull away Atlanta United, if you pull away LAFC, if you pull away the LA Galaxy, if you pull away, Seattle, and maybe a Portland, just to put 5 names on a list, if you pull those 5 teams away from what we currently know as Major League Soccer, if you're a casual fan, where are your eyes going to go? Your eyes are going to go to those 5 teams because of what we know with what they've been able to do with wins and losses and chasing championships and that kind of stuff. I don't think that if you're a casual fan, if you create this Super League and you want to watch an MLS match that is, say, Chicago and Vancouver, I don't think that there's enough there for you to come back and continue to watch those kinds of matches if the teams that are the shiny objects aren't there.
I'll ask you this. How many Premier League games on a normal weekend are you watching a chunk of? 20, 30 minutes of that you're making appointment viewing. You're generally watching, what, 3, maybe 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4. It's usually the double headers on Saturday, Sunday, just because it's there and it's a live event and I'm waiting for other live events to happen.
How many championship games are you watching like that in a weekend?
I'm buzzing through.
So none.
I'm going back and forth and watching Championship and League One stuff if I have the opportunity
to do
checking
it. I'm talking about watching a chunk of it, like making it an appointment to watch a portion of. You're not doing that with the second division. And that's what would happen here. Because, look, we only have so much time to spend on this stuff.
Yeah.
If you do this, what's going to happen? And it's already an issue for MLS. It's an issue for Liga MX too, but a little bit less because you have some stronger brands spread around. But right now you're struggling in MLS to get people to watch the league outside of their team. So if you're already having that in MLS, you're going to have that in the Super League. But you're going to be more likely to do what John is talking about. If you have Super League games set up at 7 and 9 and 11, let's say. Let's say they do an 11 o'clock kick on the West Coast. And you're a soccer fan here, and you're probably going to have those games as your prime movers. Well, you're not going to watch the Columbus Colorado game that could be at the same time. You're not going to go there unless there's a compelling reason to. That's how I am with USL Championship, and it's not because I don't enjoy USL Championship. It's because I'm going to watch more MLS because it's the top division, it's the top league, it's the best competition. Mm-hmm. I'm going to watch more of that on a weekend, and I'm taking the work element of it out. I'm going to know from following the championship, like, Vegas is playing San Diego. That could be a really interesting match. I'll check in on it.
Yep.
But I'm not making appointment viewing. Having a Super League and having MLS and Liga MX below it, it doesn't all of a sudden give you more time to watch games. So all it does is it moves your attention. So this is when people say, like, there'd be so much more money and all this stuff. I disagree, because what it would do is it would maybe make more money for the first division than you would have had. Maybe. Probably. Because instead of having, a league where you're going to be facing Columbus, Colorado, I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying they're smaller markets and they're not moving the needle. If you have them in it versus Club America, Chivas, yeah, you're going to have more attention with the Super League. That's for sure. Okay, so let's say you get more TV money than you would have otherwise. But your money for MLS is going to be dramatically cut.
Correct.
So you're not going to keep the MLS interest and attention and financials at the same level they were and then add a new, dramatically bigger, financially impactful Super League on top of that. Not in this format. You're going to have a big Super League, bigger than your first divisions probably would be on their own, and a dramatically cut domestic league. Now, I also think that the idea that you would have this dramatic, huge pot of money, I don't know if it's necessarily there. Because if you look at what MLS does from a ratings perspective, you look at what Liga MX does from a ratings perspective, it's really good. But Liga MX, for the second leg of their final, drew 3.5 million, and MLS for MLS Cup this year drew about 2 million. Does that mean you're going to have 5.5 million watching the finals of the Super League? Probably not, because there's probably some crossover.
Yep.
And even if you did, let's say you get there, what does an average NFL game draw on a weekend?
Average NFL, you're probably talking nationally, high singles, so you're talking 8, 9, 10, depending on the matchup, maybe 12, maybe a 12.
So I think the idea or the impression that's being given is you would be talking those kinds of ratings, those kinds of money, and I just don't see it. I don't see it being there. I think it would be bigger, but it's not going to do that. The way you can have that kind of effect is by having 2 buckets. Because if you do a Champions League kind of Super League and you create another bucket of money, it's going to do 2 things. I think that bucket's going to be large and it's going to be good, and you're going to add to your domestic bucket because your brands are bigger and more exciting and more compelling because of the crossover play too. You're going to strengthen everything that way instead of strengthening some and hurting others in the promotion relegation league. From a fan perspective, yeah, a promotion relegation league would be really interesting. But from a business perspective, I honestly don't think it makes sense. I don't think there is enough of a gain there to offset the loss that you're going to have domestically by creating your domestic league or moving your domestic league to a second division format.
I think that the TV money just gets shifted more than anything else.
I think
because
it grows some, but I think it doesn't grow enough to offset the loss. I think you make more money if you have domestic league and Champions League than if you have promotion relegation combined league.
Yeah.
I think you make more money with strong domestic leagues and a Champions League on top of it. And you can structure that however you want. The way I would do it would be everybody's in it, because then you get the best of all of it. So you have a draw. You know, this is my fantasy world of doing a Super League between the two. You get to, Christmas time, you have a draw, you have a big fancy event, you get all the legends, all the superstars, you have a musical performer, you do it up really big, and you draw out the teams, and you can have them seeded based off their league performance from the previous year, but you draw the groups for your combined league. And your league, you're going to draw them into groups, so it's by the luck of the draw who you get. But everybody's involved. So the way you do your schedule, and both leagues are going to have to get together on scheduling. You do your league schedule, but you have certain weeks, and you can have some midweeks mixed in too, but you have your certain weeks where your weekend is the Super League. And you have yes, you can even work it out a little bit when you pick those weeks based off your schedule to move things around and create that triple header that we just talked about, where you have, at 7:00, Atlanta and Monterey. At 9:00, you have Club America hosting LAFC. And then at 11:00, you have the Galaxy hosting Chivas. You make the schedule work to where you have that super weekend of crossover games, and you put a name on it and sell a sponsorship of it.
Super de la Semana.
All the craziness. But you create a combined calendar that has domestic league, that has Super League, and everybody's involved in it. And your matchups would change every year, because you'd have a draw every year. I think that would be the best way to grow the game on this continent from a business perspective, and would give you everything you want. The idea of having to have relegation because whatever. If you're trying to grow the business, it doesn't make sense. If you just want to do it because it is a compelling sporting competition, that's great. But what is the important thing, I think, going to be even more important coming out of all of this? The money. The money. The money's going to drive these decisions. And you're going to make decisions that are going to make you more money. Now, I would hope that you are finding a balance between just making money and creating something compelling for your fans. Because ultimately, if you don't, you're going to lose that money. And I think this would be the way to do it. You know, if you have a home schedule of your... And you have to figure out how many league games you're going to play. And Mexico might have to figure out their structure a little bit too. But let's say 15 to 16 home games in domestic league, plus another 4 or 5 in the Super League that are guaranteed that you're selling season tickets for. Let's say you have 20 games. 20 home games in a regular season that you are selling tickets for, you're selling your season tickets for, and then playoffs on top of it. That's pretty good. That's pretty exciting. And you have another trophy that becomes a big deal that you're playing for. And like we talked about last year, you know, you can find success in a season if you don't win your domestic championship or you don't win your Super League championship because you've got trophies to play for. You've got different things. You know, would teams maybe, you know, become more focused on their domestic league at the end of their group stage in the Champions League or the Super League if they're not doing well? Yeah. You know, would teams maybe sacrifice some regular season games for Super League playoffs if you get to that point? Yeah. Those things are going to factor in. You've got to figure out the calendar. You've got to figure out structures. But that's where my head's at. I just think there's more money that way.
Yep. Apparently, we have convinced Tafka to change his mind. He says, give me juiced up CONCACAF Champions League.
Wow. Okay. I'm kind of proud of myself. Did I lawyer the lawyer?
That's the question.
I think I did.
Woo! Appropriate, yes.
I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, man.
I'm just thinking about it from the business perspective.
And that's the thing. If you look at it strictly from the business aspect and from the TV partner aspect and what is best for business, it is creating something separate and apart, integrating the pieces that you have instead of pulling pieces away and pulling the best parts away, so you end up with something separate and apart from what you had, because it doesn't help what you've taken away to grow this new product.
All right, we'll see what we get into with our friend Mike Conti here in just a bit. But, John, why don't you tell us about our favorite lawyer in Decatur, Georgia?
Atlanta Trial Attorneys, Apolinski and Associates, LLC. You can request a free consultation a couple of different ways. You can do it in their online live chat, secure, free, and easy. You can give them a buzz, 404-377-9191, or reach out to them at steve at aa-legal.com. Knowledgeable years of experience, over 40 million in verdicts in settlement, serving clients in Georgia and Alabama. Their goal is to provide the best legal representation for clients and their families. Wrongful death and personal injury trial lawyers. Stephen Apolinski has been recognized as one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia. Preeminent personal injury law firm, successfully handles catastrophic injury, wrongful death cases throughout Georgia and Alabama. Once again, live chat online right now, right this very second. Or give them a buzz, 404-377-9191, or reach out to Steve at steve at aa-legal.com.
Not bad. Not bad. I think you're getting better at that.
Well, it's just trying to, and I'm doing this without a clock, so I'm trying to time the read, and I don't know if I'm supposed to take the entire 2-minute commercial break to do it, or if I'm just supposed to do a 30 or a 60. I'm trying to gauge on a daily basis how much I'm supposed to fill here.
No, there are no rules, John.
Sweet.
You can take whatever time you want to take, as long as you tell everybody about the qualities of Apolinski and Associates.
And would you like to talk to folks about the quality of the Jason Wright Agency?
Yes, I like the quality of our MLS Fantasy League. I'll like it even more when MLS is playing and we can talk about it. Jason Wright of the Jason Wright Agency has run our Fantasy League from day one. You can follow him on Twitter, Jason Wright, AGEN. You can follow him on Facebook, Jason Wright Agency. All your insurance needs, business, home, auto, whatever you need, he can take care of you. So make sure you're following him, and when we get MLS back, we will have more Fantasy League updates.
What you said, and that'll give me the chance to be a fair to Midland team.
Yeah, pretty much. I had the awful first week, though, but I had some bad picks that didn't work my way. Mike will be joining us at 10:30. He's had a meeting that's running a little bit long. It's NFL draft tomorrow, so the radio station is a little busy getting ready for something live to talk about. I know they are all very happy about this. So Mike will be joining us here in just a bit. What else do we have on the Twitters before we jump into the news?
Sure. Matthew Harris yesterday says, one thing I haven't heard mentioned since the cancellation of DA is ODP, and that's where the scouts are going to flock to now. In Matthew's opinion, ODP used to be a league of second-tier players. Now it will all be first-tier, a new era of ODP in 2021.
It won't be first-tier. It'll be a different tier because, I mean, you're going to have some form of the professional academies playing games. And if MLS creates this league and figures out what they're going to look like, that'll be part of it. You'll have ECNL as well. So, like, the league games are going to still be there for top players. What ODP was a scouting tool, and it was separate from league play. So you didn't have DA players participating in ODP because they didn't need to. Would ECNL players, which right now, without the MLS league really knowing what the structure is going to look like, the ECNL league would probably be considered the top national league. Would they be getting the attention from the national team scouts that you would get at ODP? National team, regional team, what have you. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know how U.S. Soccer is going to change that because there's multiple things at play. U.S. Soccer created the DA to make it easier for their scouting. And because you needed something like that, you needed to push the focus to development. Now you don't need that, but you still need to scout because you're still making choices for youth national team camps at U14 even, and you're having games at U15, and you're having a World Cup at U17 and U20. And you're going to have some players outside of the professional system that you need to find for those things. So could ODP be the bridge for that? I think it could. I think ODP should be maybe reimagined a little bit. But yes, I would like to see U.S. Soccer put some more resources to a beefed up ODP to widen the scouting net, period. And that would be something that if I'm U.S. Soccer, I'm pitching it to the MLS teams in every market and even the USL Championship teams to get their involvement on helping with it. To take it where it becomes a partnership between U.S. Soccer, the federation, the state associations, and the professional teams in the market. The professional teams aren't administering it, but do they help with the scouting? Yeah. Do they help with if it's facilities to actually hold the ODP tryouts, to hold the training sessions, some coaching assistance, those kinds of things? That's where you can create a compelling partnership. And it would help the professional teams. Because, look, the professional teams want the best talent. And this would help them identify some of that talent, too. And it then gets to the bigger question that I think U.S. Soccer at the youth level is going to have to look in the mirror on. This has been coming since professional teams started youth teams and started trying to develop players. Is that my player? The clubs don't own players. Youth clubs don't own players. You should want what's best for the player. And ultimately, what would be best is if the player can play with a professional team and make a living playing the sport. That's something to celebrate. I think Atlanta United's done as good of a job as any professional team in bridging that gap When a player comes through the academy and signs a pro deal, signs an Atlanta United 2 deal, signs a homegrown deal, they're celebrated for the clubs that they came from as well. George Bello coming from Alpharetta Ambush, for example. That's a huge thing for Alpharetta Ambush. And Alpharetta Ambush is a club that I know would want that for their players. And hopefully other youth clubs would not want to stand in the way of that. So when you get back to that scouting idea, if the professional teams are helping with ODP, yes, they're going to see some players that, wow, I want to sign that guy. I want to bring that guy into my academy. That should be the goal for everybody. That shouldn't be something you run away from. And I hope that we can get to more of that, because there's just a structural difference and I think it's a different level of importance, and it's not to diminish, the independent clubs, but they should be wanting their players to reach their full potential. They'll reach that far more at a professional club because of the way it's structured. So I hope that everybody can find ways to work together on this stuff. I fear that there will be issues, because there always are. There's turf wars everywhere in youth soccer, but I hope that now we're at a point where you understand the benefits. Because if you're Alpharetta Ambush, for example, you can sell people joining your club and signing up for your training sessions because, hey, George Bello came from here. We helped get him there. You can be the next George Bello. He's an Alpharetta Ambush, player. He was a player with us. He started with us. However you want to put it. That becomes a selling point. It's not a negative that he left. It's a good thing that he left because he became a professional. That kind of stuff needs to be more, I think, thought out. And I hope that we can get there. So I think ODP can be part of it. It's just getting people on the same page to get the most out of the program that you can.
The Colonel came in the in-betweens before the show this morning.
What up, Colonel?
And on his hashtag WallPassWhatever, he put a link to the article from the Salt Lake City Tribune newspaper where Mike Petke has settled his lawsuit with RSL. Colonel says Petke's a good guy who did a bad thing. Hope he comes back strong.
Yeah, it didn't do anybody any good for that to keep going. So I'm glad for both the club and for Petke that they've found whatever settlement they needed to find. And I think Mike has said this stuff since all this happened. He's got to handle his anger issues better. To be in the role that he would be as a manager, he's got to handle that better. He can't lose it to the point that he's saying the things that he said to that referee. That's completely and utterly unacceptable. I hope that this is something that can help him with that. And I hope that, whatever he needs to do to be able to handle those situations, he can. Because I agree. I think he is a good guy. I think he's got a really good head on his shoulders. I think he gets the game like very few in the country. I think he explains the game and all of it very, very well. And I want to see him back in the game, and I want to see him succeed because we need people like him in the game. But we don't need that side of it. We don't need homophobic slurs being said to referees because you don't like something they did. That's unacceptable. And I hope that part of Petke's persona can be eliminated and continue to accentuate the really good things he brings to the game that we need in the game in this country. So, yeah, I do hope that he finds a spot and is successful. I'm glad that they settled this and it didn't go to a nasty court case.
Antinho is in this morning, and he says, gents, based on the Michael Vick appearance on Spiked Up, in an alternate universe, what position would Julio Jones play in soccer? I'm thinking greatest cornerback of all time.
Okay, we're going to hold that because that's going to be an interesting one to get Mike involved in when he's able to join us. So hold that one. What news do you have that we need to hit before Mike joins us in about 20 minutes? Okay,
so you want to start, I was going to say, do you want to start on this side of the Atlantic or the other?
You call it.
All right, well, let's go with this side of the Atlantic, I guess, to start things off. And with the Petke news that we have been taken away, apparently, according to the Sun newspaper, Cesc Fabregas is interested in coming to play in MLS.
Okay. It is a source that I generally don't follow. So take that with a grain of salt. Cesc is 32. So, okay, still at an age that you'd be okay with. He started at Monaco this current season. Well, in 2019 is when he went to Monaco. 31 games there. I was at Chelsea for the preceding 5 years, played 138 games in 5 years. Wasn't playing as much. I seem to remember a good number of injury issues.
Mm-hmm.
Fair?
Fair.
Monaco, 31 games. He joined them in January of 19. So 31 games in a calendar year, maybe a game or two in 2020, or a few games. That's not bad. So he's still, it seems like he's got his injury issues under control. That's good. An incredibly talented player, an incredibly technical player. He's the kind of player I'd like to see in this tier. That is a name that people know. You know, he's a World Cup winner. He's a Champions League winner, so he's got a pedigree, like very few in the game. Does he have the Beckham, Zlatan, Messi, Ronaldo effect? No, I don't think he does. But is he a good player to have in a team because of the skills he brings on the field? Absolutely. He's different than Steven Gerrard when he came, because Gerrard's game was so based on his work rate. When he got older, he couldn't give you that work rate consistently, so he wasn't as impactful. Cesc is not the same. You're talking about technique. You could play him, go back to how he was trained at Barcelona, how he came up. You could play him in a holding midfield role, pair him up with somebody to do some of the running for him, so you manage his legs a little bit. And, God, that's a player I'd love to have in that role. If he can stay healthy, that's a player I'd love to have in that role. He's got enough of a name to where he'll get soccer fans' attention. He's not going to cross over into the mainstream like a Beckham did, but he's a name. And you have to understand what you're getting. You're going to get respect. You're going to get credibility. And if he can deliver on the field, then he's going to help your team. So, yeah, I think he's a really, really interesting idea. You'd have to start thinking about what teams he would fit at. Honestly, the way he plays would be a really good fit for Atlanta United, depending on what kind of legs he has. If he sat in that holding midfield spot and became your focal point in a possession-oriented team, man, that's pretty nice. So you don't have a designated player spot, and that's what it's going to take for him, I would assume, unless he just really wants to come to this country and would take a high TAM number. But, yeah, I like the idea. It's just all about health.
He held a Q&A session on Twitter, and the question was posed, would you ever consider a move to USA to play in MLS? His answer was, time will tell. I like the idea. One day in a few years, maybe. And the Sun...
No. I'm done. That's all I need to know. Because you're not thinking about it now when you're on the back end of your prime. You've already had injury issues, so your prime might even be gone now. After 32, when you're talking about in a few years, no, I'm done. Then you're not taking it as seriously as you're going to need to. Change my mind. Don't need it.
Okay. The Sun said that his comments would likely put Inter Miami on red alert.
If he came now, no, they don't, because he said in a few years. If he said, I'd be very interested now, absolutely. But again, it's people jump to, Inter Miami because they've got money and whatever. He's not gonna change the needle for Inter Miami. He's not that level of a player. He's a great player. Soccer fans are going to be excited. But when you're talking about changing the paradigm of a team, moving the needle, Q ratings, all that kind of stuff, he's not that guy. You're not going to have a sports fan in South Florida say, they just signed Cesc Fabregas, I'm buying a season ticket. You're not going to get that guy. Nope. You might get some of the soccer fans who are like, well, I don't know if they're going to be all that good. you're going to get some of them. Is it going to be enough? And that's what you have to measure. He'd be a great addition because of what he could bring on the field today. In a couple of years.
But at 35?
Yeah, 35. No, I don't want it. Unless you're getting him for not even a TAM. Like you're getting him for nothing because he wants to come here and play, and he shows that he can still do it. Okay, maybe. But no, I'm not signing him for anything substantial in a couple of years. That mentality, when people say that, that's a red flag for me that they don't take MLS as seriously as it needs to be taken.
Jarrett gets credit for this next one. It was a notification from Tuda where LGP has revealed that Xolos has cut salaries in half currently.
Xolos is a club that struggles for money on a good day. You take that to this situation, and yeah, it's no surprise at all. It's absolutely no surprise, and I'm assuming there probably was not any negotiation about the players agreeing to that. That's just what had to be done.
Yeah. So that was not necessarily a surprise considering the current economic landscape, but yeah, that came out from Tuda last night.
Yeah.
On the other side of the Atlantic, beIN Sports and Amnesty International have warned the Premier League about the possible new owners of Newcastle United. The Premier League has been urged by one of its largest overseas broadcast partners to, quote, fully interrogate Newcastle United's proposed £300 million takeover. The chief executive...
Hold on 1 second on the LGP thing, because sure. We need to be clear in how this happened.
Sure.
This is translated, but what LGP said in an interview. They made a drastic decision. They made a significant reduction in salary. They told us and gave us the reasons why. We understood it to help the situation, and that is why we agreed unanimously. There was an agreement on the lower salary of more than 50%, and that affects us. It was all discussed between the parties, and they told us that when it is normalized, they would return it to us. Now, I don't know if that means it's deferred or they would return the salaries to normal levels when this is back to normal.
Right.
He also did say something about Atlanta. He said, I was very comfortable in Atlanta. I needed to have a new personal challenge and new goals to meet. I needed the challenge to grow in my personal career. The Mexican League is very competitive, and it is seen all over the world. It was an important challenge. The part about being seen all over the world, Chicharito said the opposite about Europe. He said that they see MLS a lot more than they saw Liga MX. That's something to consider. But needing a new challenge, that's understandable. That's definitely understandable. I'll just be curious to see if more comes out. If this is a 50% deferral or if it's a 50% cut until normal activities and then you're back to your normal salary level. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. No,
wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and that's got to be laid out there. So that there was discussions and all that. No, perfectly cool to get that out there. But yes, so the Premier League has been urged by beIN Sports and Amnesty International.
Very different reasons on both of the people urging.
Yes. The chief executive of beIN Sport, Youssef Al-Obeidly, has written to the chairs of top-flight clubs about the deal. And in the letter, he accuses the Saudi Arabian government of the, quote, facilitation of the near 3-year theft of the Premier League's commercial rights and, in turn, your club's commercial revenues through its backing of the huge-scale BeOutQ pirate service, end quote. It is no exaggeration to say that the future economic model of football is at stake, and Obeidly has also written to Premier League chief executive Richard Masters. BeOutQ has been, and this is the wording from the BBC, BeOutQ has been illegally showing matches, mainly in Saudi Arabia, despite the rights to show games in the region belonging to beIN Sports, who are currently in the middle of a 3-year deal with the Prem worth £400 million.
So beIN is pushing against it because of piracy reasons that Saudi Arabia has backed. And this has come up before. Amnesty International, obviously, is a completely different reason. It's not about TV piracy.
No. Amnesty International UK Director Kate Allen said in a separate letter to Masters, quote, "So long as these questions about Saudi Arabia's human rights record remain unaddressed, the Premier League is putting itself at risk of becoming a patsy of those who want to use the glamour and prestige of Premier League football to cover up actions that are deeply immoral, in breach of international law, and at odds with the values of the Premier League and the global footballing community," end quote.
The issue here is going to be some of the other owners in the Premier League could be at question for some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not all of that, not the same things, but some of that are going to factor into other Premier League owners and those discussions. It hasn't stopped them before, and that's what's difficult about this. Now, this is a situation where it's not just somebody coming in and buying it and they buy it and that's what it is. Like, there is an approval process to join the league. That's where the league does have a say in the types of people that it wants to associate with. But again, the conversation, I would assume, if that becomes an issue. And look, I mean, we've all seen the different things when it comes to the Saudi Arabian government. Manchester City would have questions. I mean, if you're going to start questioning owners in the league, not to the same degree, but in terms of the money and elements of it, I mean, I think you'd even have to consider some of the oil, oligarchs, Abramovich.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia and all of that. So it's really difficult. I wonder if the piracy issue becomes the cover for concerns that are truly about the other side of it. Because that's something you can talk about that is very different than any other owner you have in the league. If you can start to make direct connections between the new potential owners or where the financing is coming from and pirating your league's games in that market. Yeah. Versus a slippery slope when you start comparing owners that are already in the league. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if the Premier League is going to be able to really have the backbone on this one. That they probably need to.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to be able to. Because I don't know if they're going to be able to truly justify it. Not with some of the owners that are already in the league. And not with the financial situation that the league is going to face.
Yep.
That's a tough balance.
From the Sun this morning, an exclusive from Alan Nixon, the Premier League clubs plan to return to training on May 9th after telling players to get ready to go back to work.
Huh. All right, we're going to get Mike Conti in right now, and we'll talk a little bit about these timelines as we go, because we have the Premier League with a time to potentially get back to training. We have the Bundesliga with a time to potentially start playing. We have the Netherlands with an idea that they will not resume action.
Intends not to continue.
All kinds of complications and all kinds of confusion. All kinds of confusion on technical stuff, getting Mike on the line as well. So I was like, trying to draw that out, and it's just not going through. We'll keep working on it. Premier League, looking at starting training in, what would that be, a couple of weeks?
Yeah, May 9. Managers throughout the country have been in touch with their holidaying players to tell them of the new plans. Eddie Howe called his Bournemouth players to alert them when they are due to go back in to start work. Sheffield United have adjusted their proposed date of a May 4 reboot. We'll now get together on May 9th as well. Sean Dyche's Burnley are also due back in at the same time as they prep to see out the campaign aiming for Europe. Other clubs are keeping their plans under wraps, but most think that is the best and first available date to begin preparation.
All right, Mike. So we've got the Premier League with a date to return to training. We've got the Bundesliga training, but we've also got the Netherlands saying they're not going to finish the season. It's still chaos. We don't really know anything more than we did last week.
And by the way, I'm sorry for joining you so late, guys. I'll tell you what, I am so sick of Zoom meetings that when this is all said and done, I have no interest on ever being on a Zoom meeting again. I think we are getting closer. I got to be honest with you, Jason. I mean, it seems like we have some firm dates on the Bundesliga. It seems like Serie A
pretty firm in terms of the Bundesliga. It's pretty close.
It seems like Serie A has unanimously indicated their intent that they want to come back playing. The Premier League, no closer than last week, but I think the result.
Well, they've got a date for training. That's a step in that we didn't have before. May 9th is now the idea that they'll start training in England again. Yeah,
and that's interesting because that's 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really not that far away.
Yeah.
I saw what they're doing in Holland. I guess Belgium is probably not going to resume.
Belgium already said they're done.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I don't think anything necessarily has changed dramatically from week to week, but I think the resolve is mostly still there, and that's the key. I just got off a long meeting about what we're doing with the Falcons this year, and I agree with the sentiment that these professional leagues are going to do whatever they can to play something, and within the confines of what they're allowed to do. I think Major League Soccer is in a very interesting and difficult position that, say, the Premier League doesn't have to deal with, that the Bundesliga doesn't have to deal with, that Serie A, all these leagues in Europe don't have to deal with. You have the element of international travel with your 3 Canadian clubs. And I think that's going to be a little bit challenging to resolve. But if the NBA and Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League can resolve it, so can Major League Soccer.
True.
So I think the resolve is still there to play. I haven't heard any dramatic sentiment from players or executives that, hey, we don't want to do this. It sounds like players are going to have to take a very nasty pay cut. But look at the rest of the world right now, what we're all dealing with. My family income has almost completely vanished. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that as well. So these are tough times, and tough decisions are going to have to be made. But like I've been saying with you guys for weeks, you can take something or you can get nothing. And I think as it comes to soccer around the world, if there's an opportunity to get something, they're going to go ahead and do it.
Mike, we have Jason. Do you want to get into the question that was posed to the floor before we had Mike on?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike, here we go. In honor of what you're going to be facing around the corner, based on the Michael Vick appearance on Spiked Up, in an alternate universe, what position would Julio Jones play in soccer? And Tino is thinking the greatest corner of all time. Oh, center back.
Center back. Yeah, I don't think Julio Jones as a center back would be really interesting. How tall is Julio, Mike?
I'd have to look it up. I would guess probably in the 6'2" to 6'5" range.
Too. Yeah, for some reason I was thinking 6'4".
Yeah. Boy, oh boy.
Could you imagine Miles? Could you imagine a back line that had Miles and Julio?
No, I can't.
Jump out of the building.
It'd be impenetrable, and I would really like my set-piece defending. Part of me thinks, Julio being so tall and so fast, I'd really like to see him as a box-to-box midfielder, because I think he could really cover a lot of ground. I can't imagine what his technical ability would look like.
That would be it. The problem, the taller you get generally, it's harder to be as good with your feet. When you just look at it, a lot of times your midfielders or your short guys, have a low center of gravity. They're just stronger, with their technical skill with their feet. Julio, as an athlete, you'd love to have in the game. you could, find a way to make it work. And this is all assuming, like, you're getting to him at 12, let's say,
Right.
even if it's late in terms of typical development. He's such a freak of an athlete that you'll try to work with that. I would look at center back or maybe even a center forward, depending on what his soccer personality was like.
Yeah. I think he would also be a really good goalkeeper. Again, because of his leaping ability, his size, his speed. But as far as an outfield player is concerned, yeah, I'd probably lean center back. Or a striker that didn't need to dribble.
One that you're just trying to have finish.
Exactly. Someone that you could put on the edge of the six on a corner and just try to have him bash in a bunch of headers. This is one of those old sports talk debates that I heard a lot in 2006 during the World Cup, where you had personalities like Colin Cowherd saying, well, if Chad Johnson and Terrell Owens had decided to play soccer instead of American football, the USA would easily win World Cups. I don't think that's true. But
not necessarily.
But that was a tired argument that really came up a lot during the disappointment of the 2006 World Cup run, and I don't think it's that simple. I really don't.
What would drive me nuts is when they'd say something like, well, if LeBron James played soccer. All right, LeBron is what, 6'8"?
Yeah.
Yes.
250.
And about 280 pounds.
Yeah.
How many even forget the size, the heft. Like, how many 6'8" guys do you see in the game? Like,
well, I think, on the height, absolutely.
Yeah, Peter Crouch would be the closest, and that's it.
There's just nobody like that.
I think the argument was, okay, a guy like LeBron who's 6'8", 250, let's say he started in soccer at a young age. He didn't hit the weights in the same way and do the nutrition in the same way. His body may have filled out a little bit leaner. But, I'm with you, Jason.
It's the height. It's honestly,
you're still 6'8".
He's 6'8". There's no way you can be as good with your feet at that height. No. When you're talking about tall players like that have played and been successful at the highest levels of the game, you're talking Peter Crouch. And I'm not talking goalkeepers either, because if you're going to have LeBron on a soccer field, I'm putting him in goal, first off. But, Peter Crouch, Jan Koller played for the Czech Republic.
How tall was Schuberg? 6'6"?
He might have been 6'7", Axel Schuberg, and you're not even getting to the highest levels of the game there. Like, it's a handful of guys over 6'5". 6'8" is a whole different conversation. Now, if you want to do this conversation in a real way, and I'm taking a guy that I'd love to see play soccer because I think he's got the athletic skills and the mental ability to play the position. Give me Trae Young as a number 10 all day long. Mm-hmm. His vision, his quickness, and the way he sees how his awareness, his in his case court awareness, but you translate it to a field. You get him at a young age training. Now that's a player, a point guard playing soccer in the midfield. I'll take all day long.
I'll give you another one, a kid who grew up in Gwinnett County, and I know, he plays for the Saints now, but Alvin Kamara is someone who I think would be a very, very good soccer player. His ability to play in traffic, not in the sense of literally playing in traffic, run the ball through traffic, and the vision and the split-second decision-making, but also the strength that it entails. I think, if you're going to, going back to Julio, if you're going to identify a position on the football field that may translate the best to soccer, I would argue probably running back. Devontae Freeman, I think, could have been a very good soccer player if he decided to get into it at a very young age. Warwick Dunn, same thing. I think someone who would have been a very, very good soccer player if he got into it at a very young age.
I'll take a different position that I think in a certain kind of team would really fit. Keanu Neal as a number 6 defensive midfielder getting stuck into some tackles.
I could see that, absolutely. Yeah. I can. And then on the other hand, if Josie Altidore had decided to play football as opposed to soccer, I think Josie Altidore could have been a very, very good running back or a very good cornerback.
Yep.
For some of the same reasons that we're talking about, strength and speed. So I think that there is some translation. I just cringed at, this was a Colin Cowherd thing, and people who know me know I'm not a big fan of him, but I just think it's such a lazy take that, if LeBron and DeAndre Hopkins and you name
Hopkins
the
actually
athlete,
a big soccer fan at least.
No, well,
he
he's
grew
a
up
fan.
playing.
He's a fan, but his physical, again, with his height, I don't know. At some point, you're going to grow out of a soccer player's body, even if you're not trying.
To a degree, yeah. He did grow up playing, though. He at least had a background in it.
Yeah, but I think it's just such a lazy argument that, if America's best athletes decided to play soccer as opposed to some other professional sport, we would be much more competitive at the international level. I just don't think that's true.
No,
I don't think
I
that's
agree
true.
with you there. Now, take it to another step. Not saying that, if they played, then you're winning World Cups. No. But what players could have been good soccer players? What it goes back to for me is the U.S. has a very unique, I consider it an advantage. I think some say it's not. I think it is, that you can grow up as a kid playing basketball and developing a skill set that does help you on the soccer field. Mm-hmm. You can grow up as a wide receiver, a cornerback. There's different positions in American football that can deliver some skills that you develop at a young age and help you on the soccer field. There are some things that growing up in the U.S. and playing other sports, and we're talking, 10, 11, maybe 12 where you start to really zero in on one sport. But before that, training and playing in multiple sports is good for you as a potential soccer player, not a bad thing.
Totally agree. And I think it also, as a young person, it helps you achieve balance, maybe makes you a little less likely to burn out on the sport, which I think is a real problem that you see in, say, tennis, gymnastics, swimming, a lot of Olympic sports. These kids, they just burn out.
Baseball, too.
Yeah, very much so. Kids burn out because it's just all they do all the time. And I think the cross-training nature of what you're talking about is actually really, really... Like, if I had kids, if I had a son or a daughter who wanted to get into sports, I would hope that they would want to play soccer in the fall, maybe basketball, or swim in the winter, and in the spring play baseball or softball or run track. I think it's just very, very important to not only get that level of cross training, but also it's like when you go to the gym, like, you don't want to do the same workout every day. You're going to get bored and fatigued. It also exposes you to different coaches and different coaching styles. And you might connect better with some coaches than you would with others. So I think the argument goes well beyond just developing a soccer skill set. I think in many ways it makes it more viable to have a career in sports if you can keep things fresh like that.
All right, so we've mentioned Keanu Neal, Alvin Kamara, Trae Young, Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones. Joe Johnstone wanted us to go to that next step and come up with the best non-soccer professional athlete for each position in a starting 11.
All right, and let's even have a little more fun with it. We'll stay in Atlanta for this.
There you go.
We will make, if another city challenged us to a professional sports soccer game, and we're having to take our professional athletes and form a soccer team out of it. We've mentioned Trae and Keanu Neal and Julio, so we've got them in the mix. We got a center back, we got a 6, and we got a playmaker. Who would be our goalkeeper? Who's our best?
I would want John Collins to keep goal.
I like that.
I think, again, his size, his leaping ability, he's still relatively nimble. He hasn't, gotten old and injured and all that. So I'd want John Collins to keep goal.
You don't even need him to punt the ball either. He could probably throw it 60
yards. He could throw
yards.
it. Yeah, he could throw it over the halfway line. Absolutely.
I'll take that.
He would never have to have the ball at his feet unless he was making a kick save.
You would have to structure your strategy a little bit. You're not going to play back to the keeper in possession with John Collins.
No.
You're going to go old school. So we need a center back partner for Julio.
Right. All right, so what kind of an individual would you want for a center back to be paired with Julio?
Well,
I guess let's think of it philosophically and then plug them in.
Okay, if we're going to go philosophically, we've got a freak athlete in Julio who's going to win everything in the air, so we don't need another huge guy who's going to win a bunch of crosses, win a bunch of set pieces. We'd like to have somebody who might be a little bit better with their feet, still size, but would be a good partner for him.
I would suggest Deion Jones then. Someone who can move laterally.
Yeah.
Again, look, we're having fun here. I mean, we're not talking about anyone who has any kind of technical ability.
We're assuming we can at least get that to be. Well, we're playing a team that has no technical ability either. So.
Right. Yeah. So I would say Deion Jones. He's got a little bit of height. He can move laterally. He's got some speed. Again, a smart guy. Someone who could take a tactical foul if he needs to. I would go with Deion Jones. Julio Jones, Deion Jones. Plus, it would make it easier for the commentator. So we'll go Devo and Julio as your center back pairing.
Now,
Okay.
are you going to go? Are you Jason? Are you going to go with at least the look of a 4-4-2 here?
We're going to keep it 4-4-2 to keep it simple because
right.
we're not dealing with soccer players, so we're not going to get complicated with tactics. We want a line of 4. We want a line of 4. We want. Well, no, actually, we'll go. Sorry, we'll go 4-3-3 because we want to have Keanu Neal as our 6. We got to pair up somebody with him. Here's my idea to pair up with Keanu Neal because we need somebody different in the midfield to play with him and Trey as a 10. Ozzy Albies, quick. I think he'd be quick to play off of Keanu Neal, who would be your intimidator, and you get Albies who can kind of get up and down a little bit on the field, can be that link between Keanu Neal and Trey Young.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of a Brave to put in the team because we don't want to leave them out.
True.
No.
Ricky Ricardo says Calvin Ridley as a winger.
Yes, I was all in on that.
Are your wingbacks bombing forward?
Not a ton, but you want your... we're going to have wide forward, so we'll go 4-3-3. So what we have so far, we've got 2 center backs, we've got our 3 in the midfield. So we've got outside backs, and we've got wingers, and we need a forward. I'm thinking maybe because Ridley, and maybe it's just because he plays offense, I'm thinking as a winger, not a outside back.
Yeah, I would go Ridley as a winger. I would go Ronald Acuna as a winger. And I think actually his size probably lends pretty well to the game.
Maybe Acuna is the number 9. Maybe he's the forward.
Could be. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. My guess is he's probably played.
Yeah.
He's probably played at some point in his life. Again, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of speed, and also, I know it's something that can't be quantified, but I like to have a little bit of speed and swagger for my wingers.
Yep.
He's definitely got both. I don't necessarily know how you quantify that, but he's got it as far as I'm concerned.
He's definitely got it.
So I would take my chances with him, maybe on a wing.
Okay.
All right, so we've got... So what are we missing here? A couple of defenders?
Yeah, we need outside backs, and we need a number 9. I like Acuna. That's a really good pull. Who else on the Hawks would be in this mix?
As far as an outside back is concerned, I could see DeAndre Hunter, again, very tall and lanky, which probably really does not lend well. But I think, again,
Outside
his...
back, you can see it. Yeah.
That's tough. Now we're really putting square pegs in round holes.
Where do you think Kevin Herter would fit?
Oh boy.
I've been trying to think of a place for him, and I haven't come up with one yet.
No disrespect to Kevin, I don't see him as a soccer player.
Okay.
It's for no other reason than I can't give you one of his physical attributes that I would want to have on a soccer field. It doesn't make him a bad athlete. It just doesn't make him fit in soccer.
No,
if
absolutely.
that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense.
Whereas I think DeAndre Hunter, again, just in terms of wingspan and pride and defensive ability, might be a good outside back.
So I like Hunter there. I'm assuming he's right-footed. Right-handed, maybe.
Sure.
We'll put him on the right side.
There you go.
Then I'm going to go with a cornerback as our left back. Who from the Falcons at corner would we put on the left side?
He's not a corner, he's a safety, but I think Ricardo Allen is a very versatile,
good call.
Speedy, very, very, very intelligent player.
Yeah.
Like Ricardo Allen is someone where, Jason, if you coached him a little bit, I think he could be a really, really good soccer player because he's very, very intuitive and very, very smart.
Oh, see, now that you mentioned that, I'm going to move it around. We're going to move Albies over to a left back, and we're going to put Ricardo Allen in the midfield because of his intelligence. I'm with you there. That's a really good call. Yeah.
He's very, very intuitive. And I think, again, a lot of that you can see in his interception numbers. Yeah. He's very smart. He's kind of a quarterback of that defense. I think you saw when he got hurt, the loss of his communicative abilities really, really affected that secondary. So Ricardo Allen is someone that I think you could plug and play him in any team sport because he's very, very cerebral. He really, really gets it. He's a good communicator, and people like playing with him because of that.
All right, we got 2 players.
Hold on. He's our number 8 because you pair up Allen and Keanu Neal to sit behind Trae Young. I like that. Mm-hmm. Trey's protected. Yeah. Nobody's going to be taking whacks at Trey.
Exactly.
All right, so we're missing 2, and is Lloyd Pierce coaching the squad?
No. I think the coach... I guess it's got to be Quinn.
Yeah,
Or is there a coordinator that would fit?
Well, I was just thinking that. No, it's Quinn. It's Quinn because, I mean, he's called defenses. He wasn't very good calling defenses and being the head coach, but I think, just as far as if all he has to do is deal with tactics and not the CEO level stuff that comes with being a manager or a head coach, I think Quinn would be fine.
All right, so who's scoring our goals? Who's our number 9?
Ooh.
Freddie Freeman?
I don't
know
what his movement would be like.
I'm just throwing names out here. Todd Gurley, if he's healthy.
Huh.
Ooh, I like that.
If he's healthy.
I do kind of like healthy, that, actually.
Yeah.
If he's healthy. And it's funny because Joseph is the opposite of this, but I do like a number 9 that has a little bit of height who can be a target on set pieces.
Yeah.
Gurley is probably not the person you would think of when you think of having that height, but I just think his finishing ability would probably be good enough. He's obviously very, very athletic. I think he would be a very difficult physical presence to mark. But again, this all hinges on him being healthy.
That's a good call.
So you've got Trey as your number 10 and Gurley, a healthy Todd Gurley is your number 9.
But I could also see that flipped. I honestly could see that flipped. I could see Gurley as a 10 and Trey as a 9, to be totally honest with you. I could absolutely see that flip. Trey is not as short as you think. Trey looks short because he's playing with 7-foot tall guys. But, Trey's a solid 6'2", 6'2", 6'3". He's not as short as he looks. I just say that, having been with him in non-basketball environments, you'd be really, really surprised when he walks in a room. Oh yeah, that's actually Trae Young. He's taller than he looks.
So Trae would be like our Landon Donovan, where he kind of plays a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the same for Gurley. I really, really could. I think it could be very, very fluid up top.
I think the other one, because of Gurley's injury history that we would have mixed in, it's another guy who I think would have access to some really good individual training, and he's probably had at least a little bit of a history in the game. Ender Inciarte.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Joseph would help him out a little bit, I think.
Well, and again, I think we've seen, in Braves games defensively, Ender covers a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
So he's going to, I think he would put in a pretty honest work rate.
Chris Hutchison is recommending Greg Maddux for penalty kicks.
Yeah. Well, he's very, very accurate.
That's true.
Very accurate.
Movement on the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
If we're going classic Braves, I'll work Ron Gant in somewhere in the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could pick so many people from those early
Dion.
90s Braves teams because, Dion's a great call. Otis Nixon with his speed, I think, would be a really good call.
Otis would be a tricky winger. I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we open that Pandora's box, we could go all kinds of different places.
I hope Joe Johnston is happy with this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Joe. That was fun.
But yeah, I mean, well, considering that you've pieced together a modern day 11 and then almost went down the vintage Atlanta sports rabbit hole for another 11. I mean, that then where would you put Prime? Would you put Prime at the back, or would you have him up top to score?
Well, see, I'll tell you my thinking on this stuff. I coached a middle school team at Kip South Fulton for a few years, and I loved it because it made me think like this. Because the kids at the school, the first year, I had one kid who had ever played soccer before. And these are 12, 13-year-olds, maybe 14-year-olds mixed in. It was middle school. So I'd have to figure out how to construct a team out of athletes because this was the only spring sport that Kip South Fulton had. So, I would get basketball players. I'd get guys who played on their flag football team, and I had the one soccer player. So you start thinking, and it's co-ed too, to even make it more interesting in figuring out how to fit a team together. You start thinking about athlete personalities that would fit into certain soccer positions. And I went back to just my usual MO, what we talk about a lot in building a team. I wanted my best players in the spine. So I had my soccer player as my number 10, and he was free to roam. But he understood how to play that central midfield, more creative role, but he'd drop in and help when he needed. I had the kid who was the star safety on the flag football team as the defensive midfielder, who he could cover ground. And you start to figure it out, like, all right, what are you looking for personality-wise? Dion, for me, just immediately, I think out wide. Whether he's a winger or an outside back, just his athlete personality, that's where I think he would play as a soccer player.
What do you think, Mike?
I agree. But, Dion, as he exemplified in the early 90s when he was playing two different professional sports, is versatile enough where he's someone that if you want to make him a center back, okay, I think he can be a center back. If you want him to keep goal, he can keep goal. If you want to be a number 9, I think he could be a number 9. If you want to be a 6, a box-to-box midfielder, I think he could do that too. I think he's – I get where you're going with it, Jason, but I think he's versatile enough where you can put him anywhere.
Yeah, that's where I think – and that's what would happen in that year, that the first year that I had that team, and I was figuring it out because I had coached soccer teams. I hadn't coached a team of players who had never played. And not little kids, we're playing games. We're playing 11v11. We're trying to win games. And figuring those things out, you would see that, and I'd see a player that I'm like, well, they're fast, they're maybe not the best soccer player, but they're fast. I can use that out wide. But then once they got comfortable, you'd see, well, wait a minute. I can use that in the middle of the field and pair him up with somebody and make it work. So you start to see different things about somebody on a soccer field that maybe you don't see in what they do in their normal sport.
All right, so the 11 we have, Keanu Neal, Trae Young, Julio Devo, John Collins in net, Acuna Albies, DeAndre Hunter, Ricardo Allen, a healthy Todd Gurley, and Ender Inciarte. That's the 11 that you two have constructed.
I'd take my chances with that.
I'll take it. I think we can take any other city. We're good.
Yeah.
But that was the big question this morning. Mike, have you? We have a question on the floor having to do with a topic that we've spent basically the last 2 days on, the Super League stuff. Have you been reading up about that?
What about MLS and Liga MX?
Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's so hard to even think of this right now because of the world we're in. This is something that I think we could probably have a better idea of how it could logistically work once, the economies of the U.S. and Mexico have stabled, once the virus is gone, and we can figure out what international travel would look like. I think in general, I don't see a full-on Liga MX MLS merger. I just don't see it. What I do see is increased opportunities for competition between the two leagues beyond Leagues Cup and Campeones Cup. You're talking about two very, very different sporting nations when it comes to what fans consume. And just imagine, okay, let's just say this would happen, and MLS and Liga MX would merge. Does that mean that we're going to have an Apertura and a Clausura in the United States where we're going to play a full season up against the NFL and college football and everything that goes on here in the fall, and then, break for a month during the NFL playoff and then turn around and play another? I don't think the American sporting public is ready for something like that yet. I think, the more that these two leagues can do to play each other in competitions and in meaningful competitions is very, very important. But as far as a full-on merger is concerned, I could see it being more beneficial on the Mexican side than on the USA-Canada side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the way we've kind of went through it and where I've come back to, it's kind of where I started. And we talked about this when this first popped up in a rumor with them working together, in that I don't think a merger makes sense for either one. I think a beefed up Leagues Cup would essentially turn into what the European Champions League is, even bigger, to where you're playing those games midweek or even on some weekends, because I think that's part of the idea is you would take a break from league play on certain weekends throughout the year and play your Super League game, but where you get to where teams are playing roughly between their domestic league and the Super League about 40 games as a regular season between two competitions, so about 20 home games. Little bit more than you're doing now, but would be the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Because then your domestic competition is still strong. And I'm with you. I don't think Mexico going away from like Apertura Clausura would be a huge deal. You wouldn't even have to if you do it in the Super League format, but I think they would do it if it made financial sense for them. There's not this huge historical, sticking point there.
But I also think that, economically, the merger it wouldn't work right now, and frankly, it would not have worked in February before all this stuff happened.
It doesn't work.
No, because the wage bills of the Mexican clubs are multiples higher than some of the MLS clubs. So how do you merge the leagues and ensure a level playing field? And quite honestly, I don't think there are owners in Major League Soccer that are comfortable with spending to the level of some of the Mexican clubs. And the last thing you want is to get into a situation where you merge these leagues and Monterrey and Club America and Tigres and Chivas can run roughshod over the entire league because they're playing with one set of salary rules, and the MLS Cup or the MLS clubs are dealing with the relics of their old salary cap structure. I just don't think that would work.
I think you've gotten to a point now, and we saw it in this past offseason, where MLS teams are able to compete financially, for the most part, with Liga MX teams. The top teams are able to compete with the top teams, in terms of recruiting players, paying salaries, et cetera, et cetera. Where the Mexican teams can change it is past the designated players and past even your TAM level guys, where they can go deeper into their roster with it. So that's going to be a concern whether you do Super League or merger or whatever. It's something where MLS is going to have larger rosters and have to allow more money to be spent. And that's maybe going to take a minute. But
I think that's years down the road now.
Well, see, here's what's interesting is maybe this has changed now and changed the other way. Because I don't see MLS in the long term having a huge pullback on spending. I think they will probably spend what the CBA had set up for them to spend. Will you have as many teams go above and beyond on designated players, etc.? Maybe not. I think Mexico's spending is going to be cut back a good bit. They're going to take more of a hit.
I agree that they will take more of a hit, but I think Major League Soccer is going to take a catastrophic hit. I mean, you're talking about playing. If you get anything going this year, and I do think they will, I do think we'll have matches. I think the season will be played to completion, but you're probably talking about a season with absolutely no match day revenue. I mean, just an enormous, borderline catastrophic financial hit.
I disagree on the catastrophic part. I'll tell you why.
You're optimistic then.
I'll tell you why, just because of the
Go
numbers. When you looked at the Forbes numbers, for example, last year when valuations came out, they also had the revenue and expenditure side of it, who was making money. You had, not about the losses right now, that's not the issue, but just the spending. The most I think anybody was spending was in the $80 million range. When you look at the losses, and it will be a lot of that 80, it'll be a lot of the 80 because, and I'm not even saying in terms of revenue too, was probably around 80 as the most, maybe even 90. Okay, you're going to lose a lot of that, but when you compare it to what others are going to lose and spend, the gaps become wider.
Oh, so, no question about that.
I think MLS is going to be in a position that everybody's going to take a hit. The level of hit is going to be less because the spending is lower, and that's going to help MLS bounce back faster than anybody else. Because
yes, completely agree. But I still anticipate that could take many years. I don't think it's a bounce back in time for 2021 or 2022, unless the league has some kind of rainy day fund that we're not aware of.
Well, they've got Soccer United Marketing, which is one element of a rainy day fund, because you will have, when things can come back in terms of games being played, you'll have those Mexican national team games, you'll have those kinds of things that bring in money, but you'll also have the ability to sell players, maybe a little bit less of a market, but that will help you, and you've got, I think, a number of players in the league that you could sell and bring in money. I think it's going to be quicker because of the level of ownership of MLS. Because you've got owners who, pretty much across the league now, the few exceptions, that will look at 21, maybe 22. 22 might be the better year to look at this. Where other teams and owners don't have the financial heft that could weather this kind of hit. MLS owners can. And they will look at the opportunity, and they'll be able to look at opportunity faster than anybody else.
I agree
sense?
with all that. Yeah, it does. I agree with all that.
I think some other owners are going to be really hit, and they're already so leveraged right now at this point that it's going to take so long for mid-tier Premier League, mid-tier Serie A, La Liga teams to bounce back from this.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But I think, again, there's going to be some substantial short-term pain, and I wouldn't be. I don't know. I would not be optimistic that whenever the next transfer window opens up, whenever FIFA decides to have it.
That's going to be interesting to see, and how much activity there is, and what the spending is going to be.
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, who anywhere would be willing to spend that kind of money right now? I mean, unless you just have an absolute boatload of capital that you've pulled out of the markets, and you're just, sitting on a pile of money under your mattress. I think just as is the case with all of us involved with this program right now, like, I'm not rushing out and buying a $1,200 TV. I don't think that's a responsible purchase right now. On a much larger scale, I would wonder if owners at MLS are going to be thinking the same thing, that you might have an opportunity to purchase a really good player for pennies on the dollar, but even is that a responsible purchase right now?
It's going to be interesting, and when we know kind of what the timelines look like, I think the conversation about working with Mexico will be different once we get through this than it was at the beginning of the year. I think it will be different. I think maybe the reasons pro or con will be different, because we don't really know what the effect there is going to be yet. And that's the great unknown. But
long story short, I embrace more competitions between MLS and Liga MX, because every time we've had one of those competitions, it has been, from a quality of play standpoint, it's been at a very high level. From a fan engagement standpoint, it's been at a very high level. And I think the players truly enjoyed the opportunity too. And it really is helping MLS grow in different markets, but I think you have so many obstacles to clear to make it a workable plan that I don't know if those hurdles can ever be cleared. I think you have to take baby steps, and the first baby step is increase the number of meaningful competitions you have between the two leagues, and let's see where we are after that.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. You keep fortifying the MLS bucket of revenue. Liga MX has to do the same, and then you put a new bucket in the middle of the two, and you create a new bucket of revenue that doesn't take away from the existing bucket but brings in more revenue, and then you grow that. That's the way I think it goes to where everybody wins.
Yep.
So we'll see, but we got to save some of this because we got a show on stoppage time at 2:00.
Yeah,
for real.
Well, guess we have our first couple topics written, so that's good. Yeah, 2:00 on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page.
All right, Mike. Thank you. Talk to you.
Okay, guys. Sorry I was late.
No worries. It's all good.
All good. See you soon.
Be good.
All right. See you guys.
All right, that's it for us. We've got our watch along tomorrow afternoon, 4:00 with Stephen Glass, Atlanta United 2. That'll be on our Twitch page, twitch.tv/soccerdown. Here we're going to watch the match in Tampa Bay last year against the Rowdies, technically in St. Petersburg, but it's against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and we'll talk through it with Glassy, just like he talks through it with his players, his staff. We'll get kind of pick his brain a little bit about what he sees during a match, and you guys can ask questions the whole way on our Twitch account, twitch.tv/soccerdown here. Follow us. We'll be there tomorrow at 4. I'll be on facebook.com/929 the game at 2:00 today with stoppage time with Mike. And then tomorrow morning, 9:00 in your usual podcast or live listening places. We'll be back with another show.
So I've heard.
That's the plan. And maybe John will have Mountain Dew by then.
I hope so, to save humanity, yes.
Yeah, something like that. All right, we're gone. We'll be back. I'll be back later today, and we'll be back tomorrow morning. Mucho platio.
Mucho Willie Montañez, y'all.